Hello, I am Professor Kino, and welcome to my Office of Cinematic Antiquity. Today we will be talking about when the first Conjuring film came out back in 2013, it took the world by storm. It was adored by both critics and audience members, and it made the paranormal horror genre a reputable one once again, because the whole paranormal activity thing didn't do a great job at maintaining it. But most of all, The Conjuring made James Wan a huge household name among not only horror fans, but cinephiles of every genre around the country, and thus, the Renaissance of horror was born. I'm not sure if that's the proper terminology, but it's the one that I personally like using. And as Wan's influence began to expand, he eventually got around to making The Conjuring 2, which was on par quality-wise with the first, and I thought there was no way that this whole Conjuring franchise could be spoiled. But of course, with every successful franchise, the executive money men behind it want to milk it for everything it's worth. And this brings us to the Conjuring universe, a series of loosely connected horror films produced by James Wan, with the main Conjuring films spearheading the whole thing. And while I love the main Conjuring films themselves, I must admit that the various spin-offs, Annabelle, The Nun, etc., are pretty lackluster in comparison. But as they keep making money, more keep getting made, and while I'm excited for the third Conjuring film, I am not so excited to have to sit through all of the franchise's spin-offs between now and then. But since I review films now, I sat through the latest of them, the Curse of La Llorona, so as to review it for your benefit. So was it as bad as most of the other Conjuring spin-off films, or was it, at least almost, to the caliber of the franchise's foundational films? Premise. After two children under the charge of CPS caseworker Anna Garcia are found drowned, her life quickly turns into a nightmare when the evil spirit La Llorona latches herself onto Anna's children with the intention of killing them and claiming their souls. Writing. There is nothing new here. I swear I've seen every scene in this film in another better horror movie in the past, and that's a little unfortunate. I mean, the folktale of La Llorona is a terrifying one that is rooted deep within Latin American culture. I didn't personally grow up with it, but I know some people who did, and it horrifies them to this day. So the fact that the story here does not really utilize the folktale to its fullest potential feels a bit cheap. Yes, there was a slightly new skin around the whole thing, that of the ghosty being La Llorona, and there being a slightly Mexican feel to everything, i.e. the exorcist that is inevitably brought in to help the main family deal with La Llorona is a Mexican shaman, and there are a few creative jump scares, but everything else is the same. We start by being vaguely introduced to our main, average, slightly relatable family. A few jump scares happen. The family starts to think something's up, and the mother goes and talks to a priest who conveniently knows the story of La Llorona. More jump scares happen. The family becomes desperate, and they go the unorthodox route of hiring a controversial spiritualist, this time a Mexican shaman. They have a big ol' seance exorcism confrontation with La Llorona. Jump scares ensue. And the family succeeds. Happy day, roll credits. And amidst all these plot points is your fair share of dumb decision-making. Don't just wander through the dark following creepy sounds and unusual occurrences. Turn on a damn light, call it if anyone is around. If you get no response, don't keep walking around asking for something spooky to get you. If a spiritualist draws a line with some magical MacGuffin and says, "Do not break this line," don't then immediately do the dumb and break the freaking line. We've all seen this whole movie so many times. And while The Curse of La Llorona is not a terrible horror film, it's just one that does not live up to its potential. Like, it was more concerned with profiting off of the Latin American market than showing a satisfying story about one of their culture's most horrifying urban legends. I can only imagine the board meeting the executives had for this film's conception. The Conjuring universe is profitable. Now how can we expand its attraction and influence to Latin American audiences? I know, we'll change the main spook to the widely known La Llorona while keeping everything else the easily digestible horror fare that American audiences are used to, so as to not lose their money in the process. And the resulting story feels like your run-of-the-mill horror flick that walks dangerously on the line between cultural recognition and cultural appropriation. Acting. The acting here is all fine. Linda Cardellini as Anna Garcia is relatable and effective. She's a good low-budget horror lead, even though her character is underwritten. Her two kids, Chris and Samantha, played by Roman Christo and Jaynee-Lynne, are also good, especially as child actors go. The whole main family is a group of people who you can easily root for, but they aren't anything special. Similarly, Raymond Cruz as the Mexican shaman Rafael Olvera is also just fine. He has his moments, but is in no way as compelling as the Warrens in the main Conjuring films. And this is about the same as it is for the rest of the cast. Patricia Velasquez as the grieving mother Patricia Alvarez, Marisol Ramirez as La Llorona, and even Tony Amendola, who reprises his role as Father Perez from some previous Conjuring Universe films. Everyone does their job, but are in no way as compelling as characters like them from other films. Costumes, hair, and makeup. Nothing special, the main characters just wear your ordinary clothes more or less. The only really unique work is that of La Llorona herself, but she just seems like a mix between The Conjuring 2's Nun and Ronan the Accuser from the Guardians of the Galaxy films. However, her design isn't nearly as memorable as either of those two. She was fine, nothing more, nothing less. Set design. Once again, everything is alright. The whole film more or less takes place in a house, and the house is your normal horror house. It does its job, but is in no way memorable. Choreography. The action here is a mix of your average horror jump scares, slow walks down dark hallways, and your basic exorcism, voodoo, shamanism, mumbo-jumbo. It's nothing spectacular. Cinematography. There are glimmers of creativity here, some nice attempts to spice up the otherwise bland horror ride. One scene I liked involved the use of a clear umbrella to build tension, another involved a bathtub, and there are a few nice wide shots of Los Angeles, one in particular involving a thunderstorm. But these scenes and takes are few and far between, most everything else is by the book. You can typically guess just by the camera work, oh yep, here comes a jump scare. It is competent, but nothing to write home about. Editing. The film never feels choppy, but also never feels engaging. It is all spliced together in a boring fashion to match the rest of the film's boring and uninspired aspects. CGI. There is not much CGI. I'm pretty sure there are some added weather effects which look nice, but there is also one effect near the end that looks merely passable. The film's budget wasn't too big though, so the CGI is fine for what it is. Music. It's your basic ghosty horror music. Low, wispy, chilling, but forgettable. I mean, the composer had the chance to implement Latin American sounds and music to the soundtrack to spice it all up, but no, it's just your average ghost horror soundtrack. Direction. I'll say this about Michael Chavez, the director of The Curse of La Llorona. He is competent. Everything about this film is done by the book, and he does do some good, but the quality of this film is also its biggest problem. The whole thing feels like a horror film made on an assembly line. The ingredients used on the assembly line are from reputable places. It's not like it uses the cheap cuts, but the result is still the product of an assembly line. It has no heart, it takes no risks. It feels painfully average. And that's unfortunate, because a film about the infamous La Llorona has so much potential, and it stinks that all we got was a run-of-the-mill ghosty horror film that uses the La Llorona concept merely to appeal to Latin American audiences for profit. My enjoyment. To be honest, I was rather bored with this film. I jumped a few times, but for the most part I was going like, yep, right, of course. I was never surprised, never startled, and never really scared, and when you see a horror film, you kinda want to get scared. I mean, that's the point, and this just didn't do it for me. Recommendations. If you just want a basic horror film and don't want to think about it much, this is the flick for you. For everyone else though, The Curse of La Llorona is probably not gonna impress you. If you grew up with the story of La Llorona, this film will not capture the soul of the terrifying folktale it's based on, and if you want a film akin to the two main Conjuring films, this is just a step down. Is it as bad as the crap horror that comes out in January? No. But maybe its pure mediocrity makes it worse because it's not hilariously bad or amazingly good, it's just boring. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. If you want to add anything, feel free to comment. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I am Professor Kino, and I look forward to our next discussion.